ready for Highdeology, you artistic pieces of shit. Highdeology, yo, light your blunts and pack your bowls. Highdeology, bro, burn that shit like acetone. Highdeology, yo, introducing Salty Paul. Highdeology, bro, you can lick it salty balls. You better open up the door, bitch, it's Gorilla. Got your pussy asses screaming like no vanilla. If you're new up in this bitch, then you might be lost. You might just get the shit cannon like Kawaii cost. Sorry. So give me the lighter, light the cigarette fire. This is the shit we admire. Get the business down to the wire. You must be tripping, this ain't easy work. We burning Bibles and Qurans like we TJ Kirk. Damn. Because Paul is on a mission, obliterating the tism of this generation of offended bitches and syllogisms, tripping acid, having mystical visions, and staying in the mid, growing older and older while you be shitting. Got your girlie getting wetter, why you still screaming, DP better? I don't really give a shit if you a fantasy, get banned when you mention the manatee. It can be a little bit of vanity, got me questioning my sanity. Pessimistic philosophy, honestly, I want my Highdeology. Yo, light your blunts and pack your bowls. Highdeology, bro, burn that shit like acetone. Highdeology, yo, introducing Salty Paul. Highdeology, bro, you can lick it salty balls.
Maybe I should clear my throat before I start the show. Before I turn the mic on, I should go, you see? That way it doesn't start with that. Hello, how's everybody doing today? How's everyone going? I'm sure your poops are fibrous and healthy. You just ate a whole pizza and you feel horrible. Well, that is something that, you know, I mean, it may seem like normal to people that aren't fat fucks, but it's like a lesson that I never learn. You know, when I overeat to that extent, like I eat like half a pizza or something, just a bunch of grease, a bunch of cheese, a bunch of sugar or whatever, mostly sugar, honestly. Like I'm not a big sweets guy, but when I do eat sweets, I'll eat a bunch, you know what I mean? And then like 30 minutes later, I'll just feel like garbage, like total garbage. Not even just like, oh, I'm a little sick to my tummy. It's like, holy shit, I feel like I'm dying. Maybe I shouldn't be eating all this sugar. It's like your body giving you like red flags over and over again, and you have to relearn. Like every time the red flag it goes up, you go like, oh yeah, I feel like shit when I eat like this, huh? Rams suck, huh? You know who sucks? Anybody that watched the Super Bowl. That's who sucks. What's for breakfast? I'm thinking eggs sunny side up. I'm not even thinking about breakfast. I had breakfast a few hours ago. Went to the Waffle House with Ashley. Got myself my standing order there. My standing order at the Waffle House. I don't think I've literally never ordered anything else at a Waffle House. I know they've got like burgers and grilled cheeses and patty melts and soups and chili and all this shit. I've never gotten anything but the All-Star. I've been to Waffle House probably like, I don't know, 50, 60 times now in total, and I've ordered the All-Star 50 or 60 times. Waffle House or IHOP for best pancakes. Waffle House doesn't have pancakes, so I guess IHOP got them beat there. You're currently hunting for a shiny Hone Edge sword Pokemon. I guess good luck with that. I don't really know what that entails, but yeah, good luck with that. Are you remotely happy with your life right now? Yeah, I'm pretty happy with my life. You know, do I think that it's like ideal or perfect or, you know, like I'm done trying to make it better? No. But I'm pretty happy with the direction my life is going. I'm in love. I'm working the best job I've ever had. You know, things could be worse. Were teenagers different in the 90s? I don't know, man. I don't chill with a lot of teenagers outside of here, which, you know, there's a bunch of you teens and tweens here, but I don't know which ones of you are teens and which ones of you aren't. And I don't know Like, what about the stupidity that you post is due to your teenageness? I just don't know. I wouldn't say the Super Bowl was anything. I didn't watch it. I didn't even think about it until TJ tweeted about it or something today. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's right. Today was this stupid-ass Super Bowl. I should have listened to you yesterday. We'll never watch another football game. I'm still pissed. It's like 5 times worse than the worst Super Bowl. Yeah, football has sucked for a while now, guys. I am a Raiders fan, yeah. I mean, technically. I think I watched one Raiders game this season, though, so take that with a grain of salt, you know. Super Bowl ratings get lower and lower every year. Yeah, they do. Because they suck more and more every year. Yeah, the night shift, indeed. Well, people were mad because I was doing a lot of these afternoon ones, you know, and the night crew felt neglected. The early morning crew felt neglected. So I'm trying to spread it out a little bit, you know. The last show got taken down. Boo. Which show? Which show is this? Oh, you're talking about the last Highdeology? Yeah. It got taken down for one, like, 2-minute segment of copyrighted background music or some shit. Several other people monetized the video, but they saw fit to at least allow it to go out. I don't really care about these videos getting monetized, but blocked worldwide. Dog shit. I mean, from what I hear, there were really no good commercials this year, so I'm not. I won't say that we won't do, a Super Bowl commercial one, but probably not. Have you read the article that states the colonization of America reduced global warming due to the numbers killed? Sweet. Hey. There we go. America saves the day yet again. Yeah, I heard there was a Scientology commercial, which I don't think it's the first time they've done that. Scientology likes to advertise during the Super Bowl. Everybody chill out. Mendacious C's here. Just chill. How long have you had the beard? About 5 years now. I might actually be wrong about that. It might be a little longer. It might be like 6. They also didn't play the SpongeBob song that they promised. My only reason for care dashed aside. They were gonna play a SpongeBob song. Man, that shows you where the fucking Super Bowl is at. Was the last stream the angriest you've ever gotten? Not even close, dude. I'll be honest with you, I wasn't even really all that angry. I was slightly annoyed probably during the last stream. I don't know that you guys have ever seen me angry. You don't want to see me angry. Let me just lift every action movie line ever. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Why aren't celebrities boycotting the Super Bowl ads like they were crying about singers performing the halftime? I don't know. Who cares? Why are we still talking about the Super Bowl? I done told you guys I didn't watch it. I done told you I didn't watch it. I got nothing to say about it. We've definitely made you angry. I mean, you'd like to think that, Chase and Tom. I mean, if that's what you got to think, I won't work too hard in dismantling your delusions, but Anger is something that I reserve for things that are truly impacting me. Annoyance is what I reserve for things like chasing Tom. The stream where you called out Kawaii Cost, you were pissed. I was disappointed in Kawaii Cost. But you did at least see the Maroon 5 show? No, I didn't. No, I didn't. It may sound strange to you, but I didn't watch any part of the Super Bowl. I spent most of today utterly unaware that it was even happening. So, why am I so mean to you? Because you're a dickweed. Chasing Tom, you know this. I can't be the only person in your life to let you know that you're a fucking cock, right? There's got to be at least 15, 20 other people in your life that have told you similar things. Dune is on my list of books. Yeah, go. Get it. Read it. Read it and thank me later. It's awesome. I forgot there even was a Super Bowl. Yeah, me too. For Paul, the Super Bowl is something he eats chips out of. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Super Bowl for me, I used to enjoy it, not necessarily for the football, but because my mom used to throw a big Super Bowl party every year, you know, have a bunch of people over, get drunk, get stoned, eat a bunch of chili dogs or something. Like that for me is, you know, but I don't know why the Super Bowl needs to happen for that to happen, you know? Like if there was no football game, it would all be the same to me. I'd still have a great time. Yeah, pack a Super Bowl and ignore the Super Bowl. I mean, that's usually what I do. Back when I lived in Cali and I was near my mom, you know, Super Bowl day would come up. I'd get all stoked to go, but not to watch the game. I might watch one quarter in total of the game. The rest of the time I'm sitting out on the back porch, smoking, laughing, drinking, eating big ass fucking chili dogs, having a good time. All I do for every Super Bowl nowadays is watch a movie or play Quake. Why Quake? I mean, Quake is cool. I'm not trying to dissuade you from it, but you know, I don't know that it's the one that I would choose. I literally didn't even know the Super Bowl was happening until late yesterday. Dude, why are we still talking about the goddamn Super Bowl, dude? How many minutes are we in? 13 minutes in and we're still on the Super Bowl? And I started this by going, I didn't watch the Super Bowl. That's what I'm talking about with you guys, man. It's like something happens in the world. You want to hear every fucking like personality that you listen to talk about it. It's like, why do you need to hear me talk about the goddamn Super Bowl? Especially when I just told you I didn't watch it. Fuck the Super Bowl. Fuck football. Fuck sports fans. Why are we still talking about the Super Bowl? Oh boy. Everyone's tired, yeah. I guess so. Should give you guys a little bit of fucking slack tonight, huh? Everybody's probably tired. Everybody's sad. They gotta go back to work tomorrow. God damn it, skeptical Jesus. Oh my God. Man, I don't know what I expected tonight, but I just once again just staring into the void here. Or watch Derek Jensen. I was actually watching Derek Jensen earlier. You want proof? Watch this.
If the Germans built it again, they would blow it up again. And if the Germans built it again, they would blow it up again. And what do? We file lawsuits. We hold signs. We hold candles. We pray. We send loving kindness. And it's just ridiculous. It's absurd. And it's because we identify. We buy into the system. And several years ago, I was riding in a car with a friend of mine, George Straffen, and I was just making conversation. I said, so George, if you could live at any level of technology that you wanted, what would it be? And George was not in a very good mood and said, Derek, that's a really stupid question. We can fantasize whatever we want, but the truth is there's only one level of technology that's sustainable, and that's the Stone Age. And we'll be there again someday. The only question will be what's left of the world when we get there. And the reason for that, or the reason we can say that, is that any way of living that's based on the use of non-renewable resources won't last. I mean, eventually you run out. I mean, that's so simple that it's embarrassing that we even have to talk about it.
That's horseshit. How's that horseshit? How is any system based on a non-renewable resource being unsustainable horseshit? Yeah, Derek Jensen is one of my favorite thinkers of all time. He's still alive. I still watch his podcasts. Hardly anybody watches them. It's kind of sad. Or at least on YouTube. I don't know if he pushes them out anywhere else, but he's part of a kind of a radical environmentalist group called Deep Green Resistance. Because he said it's horseshit, therefore it is, sure.
And likewise, any way of living that's based on the hyper-exploitation of renewable resources won't last. Because if every year there are fewer salmon returned than the year before, eventually they'll be gone. If every year there are fewer passenger pigeons returned than the year before, eventually they'll be gone. That's just the way things work. I mean, 90% of the large fish in the oceans are gone. And the head of the National Marine Fisheries Service gave as his response, we have to ask what level of decline is reasonable or sustainable. First off, and this is going to be really picky about word usage, no decline is sustainable. He could say reduction. We have to ask what level of reduction is sustainable. But he should know better than to say what level of decline, because if you have decline, that means a slope downward, which means that by definition it's not sustainable.
All right, Colton. Well, I've thought a lot about the premises that Derek Jensen put forth in this Endgame talk, which is that this is just a longer, more drawn-out version of the Endgame talk that we watched together one time. It was a long time ago. You might not have been here. But this was a long interview that was done for a documentary called What a Way to Go, Life at the End of an Empire, which I've seen. It's actually a really great film. But I actually like this better than the film, this talk, this collection of clips and questions that Derek Jensen fielded. And like I was saying, I've thought very carefully about the premises that he puts forth in these talks. And when he's talking about, a sustainable level of technology, what level of technology over the Stone Age would you consider to be sustainable? Dan Hahn. Oh, I love you too, buddy. Thanks. I actually don't love you, but I love your money. Feudalism? You think feudalism is infinitely sustainable? Yeah, that's right. Wakanda.
And the next thing about that, the thing that makes it even more appalling, of course, is he's talking about a 90% decline, which is neither reasonable nor sustainable. Okay, so any way of living based on the use of non-renewable resources is not sustainable. Any way of living based on the use on the hyper-exploitation of renewable resources is non-sustainable. But I would go a step further and say that any way of living that's based on the use of resources is not sustainable. And the reason I say that is because salmon don't consider themselves resources, and trees don't consider themselves resources. They're salmon, they're trees. I remember when I was teaching, the first
This area is where I find myself disagreeing with Derek Jensen the most, when he tries to anthropomorphize trees and animals and talk about how they consider themselves. They don't. Trees don't consider themselves anything, and neither does salmon. The truth of the matter is that salmon and trees are resources, and I think that his kind of tact, at least on this subject, I think it detracts from his overall point, honestly.
first time I ever heard somebody say that her major was human resource management, I thought, oh my God, I've fallen into Nazi Germany. And the reason this is important is because there's a great line by a Canadian lumberman: when I look at trees, I see dollar bills. And if when you look at trees, you see dollar bills, you'll treat them one way. If when I look at trees, I see trees, I'll treat them differently. And if when I look at this particular tree right here, I'll see this particular tree right here, I'll treat it differently still. And of course, this is the same all across the board. If when I look at women, I see orifices, I will treat them one way. If when I look at women, I see women, I'll treat them another way. And if when I look at this particular woman, I see this particular woman, I'll treat her differently still. So my point with all that is, before the world can be destroyed in the physical sense, we have to destroy it emotionally and perceptually.
So I think that's a really important point. I really
anthropologist Ruth Benedict.
Let's pause him here for a second and discuss that. He said, it's very important to unpack that statement. He said, in order for the world to be destroyed, it first has to be destroyed mentally. It has to be destroyed emotionally. And what he's talking about is all of the little rationalizations that we go through in order to say, well, you know, the rainforest is shrinking at an alarming rate, but I still like my toilet paper. So, you know what I mean? We have to stop looking at the rainforest as an absolutely vital part of how the global ecology works, and start looking at it as a resource for us to mine and produce things with, in order for the world to be destroyed by hyper-exploitation. He's overstating the case. We don't need fancy emotional disassociation. We'll do it for the next time. Well, that's exactly what he's saying. I think you might have missed his point. He's saying that in order for the world to be destroyed in the way that we're destroying it, we've had to rationalize that destruction. We've had to say that it's okay for us to be doing it up here. You know, thought before action. Salmon and trees are resources to us as we are resources to the movement and eventual entropy of the universe. It's all one big machine, and it's inherently unsustainable. We're dying pretty quick right now, though. Well, yeah, that's, I think, the point that he's making. I don't think that Derek Jensen is opposed to the idea of entropy. I think he understands it. I think that he's talking about how we could do better now with the time that we do have at being stewards of this planet.
Did a study as to why some cultures are more peaceful than others and more secure. And what she found is, I mean, some cultures are, there's a lot more warfare, and the warfare is much more violent. There's more, women and children are treated poorly. There's a lot of insecurity. And other cultures where women and children are treated well, where there's less emphasis on warfare, and there's where people are more secure. And what she found is one simple rule that separates those types of cultures, and it has to do with, you know, sort of right-wingers oftentimes suggest that humans are intrinsically selfish, and liberals oftentimes say, no, humans are fundamentally good and we all need to just, you know, give everybody a break. And the truth is that they're both wrong, or they're both right, doesn't matter. That humans are, we are both selfish and communal social creatures. And the good cultures recognize that, and they get rid of that dichotomy between altruism and selfishness by making the most selfish thing you can do is to help your community. And they do that through praise. So, and they have social rules whereby those who give the most to the community are those who are praised. And on the other hand, they disallow behavior that benefits the individual at the expense of the community. So if you, if I were to go fishing and I were to catch a bunch of fish and I didn't share them with the community, I would be shamed. I would be, if I did it enough, I would be kicked out of the community.
God damn it. God damn it. Muted. Okay. I can't even remember what I was saying now. Maybe a lip reader can transcribe what I was talking about. God damn it. Everyone's contemplating the beard, but I've yet to hear someone contemplating on how good you look with that mustache. Well, the mustache is part of the beard. Yes. Just the bad lip reader. Yeah, I know. Sorry, guys. Whoopsie daisy. What I was saying is that this kind of tact that he's taking is a conversation stopper for a lot of people, because he's talking about the radical idea that human beings ought to help one another rather than themselves, communally speaking. And he's talking about an anthropological study done in what was considered to be the most peaceful communities in the world, to see if there was any correlation between them, see if there was any attributes of those societies that were shared that could be, responsible for the fact that these people lived so peacefully. And what he's talking about now is social pressure. He's talking about we live in a society now where we see somebody hoarding wealth to themselves, and instead of shaming that person for it, we actually celebrate it. We celebrate the hoarding of wealth, capital, land. We look at those people and we say, I want to be just like that. I want to be somebody that has so much that, that he could literally never consume it in his entire life, and that his progeny could never consume it in their entire lives going 10 generations forward. In these more peaceful communities, people share with one another, and when people act selfishly like that, the example he gave was a man catching a bunch of fish. If you come back into town with a big rack of fish over your shoulder and you make no effort to help feed the rest of your community who has helped to feed you so many times, then you'll be shamed for that. It's a completely different way of living, and almost scary for Americans to think about.
And on the other hand, if I catch these fish and I share them with the community, then I am praised. It's very, very simple. You don't. If on the other hand, in the cultures where everyone was insecure, behavior that benefited the individual at the expense of the whole is rewarded, and it all comes down to how culture handles wealth. If it handles it through what she called a siphon system, whereby wealth is constantly siphoned from rich to poor, everyone is secure, because I give away all the fish today, and tomorrow you give away all the berries, and the day after that you give away all the tofu, and on the other hand, in a culture where they handle wealth through what she calls a funnel system, whereby wealth is constantly funneled from poor to rich, then everything is a competition, and everyone is insecure for obvious reasons. And we, of course, have an entire culture that's based on that funnel system. And so I guess those are the reasons why I think that the culture really is irredeemable. I mean, as long as a social reward system is set up, it's going to continue to reward this behavior.
So This is one of the fundamental things about his philosophy that I find myself agreeing with. And once again, a total conversation stopper for a lot of political thinkers in the Western world. The idea that the security and safety and well-being of people is more important than the ability or right of those people to hyper-exploit the land base, to hyper-exploit every economic aspect of society, and to hoard their wealth and goods. I think our current culture, our current society, Western civilization is inherently irredeemable. I couldn't agree with him more. A really good vid to get people stopped talking about the super high. I was desperate, and somebody happened to mention Derek Jensen, and I just happened to have a tab open with one of his talks on that I was listening to earlier. You can see I listened to about 15 minutes of it. People don't understand that communism requires a giant state, and a state is the ultimate parasite that won't ever shrink. Well, he's not talking about communism. He's talking about a different way of living. He's talking about small communities living naturally on the land base, not importing resources, not requiring the importation of resources, but living naturally. He's sitting on a piece of land now, and at the beginning of this talk, he talks about the Tallua Indians who lived on the land that he was on, that he's sitting on right now. During this interview, and how the Tallua lived on that land for at least, from what we can tell, 12,500 years. I'll say that again, 12,500 years worth of constant occupation of the land base by an entire society of people who didn't denude the land base, who managed to continue to survive generation to generation to generation for 12,500 years without hyper-exploiting their land base, without requiring the importation of resources, without having to go to war to get food that they couldn't make on their own land base because they had sufficiently denuded their entire fucking village and the surrounding area. So that's what he's talking about. He's not talking about communism. He's not talking about handing over power to a giant communist state and letting them distribute things to people, and as he calls it, funnel that money out of the poor class and to the upper class, which, every experiment in communism that's ever been tried here on the planet has resulted in that. It's resulted in a ruling class that siphons the wealth up to themselves and lives a completely different lifestyle than the people that are normal, your average citizen. Did these tribes actually have security from disease or exposure? Exploitation has costs, but there are society-wide reasons people do it. Well, for 12,500 years, they managed. Did they have all of the medical technology that we have now? Did they have all of the modern conveniences that we have now? Did they have all the safety regulations and safety guardrails and ramps and handicap parking spaces that we have now? No. I think that the argument that Derek Jensen and people like him are making is that to trade safety and security and modern medicinal practice for a planet that can't sustain us it's not a valuable trade. And the value of a human life, we value life being long, because we live in an era and come from a long line of generations of people who have lived with modern medical technology. And the span of a human life has gone from 35 years in the early days of humanity, maybe even less, to 40, to 55, to 65. And now we're sitting somewhere, in the first world around like 76, 77, 78 years. But what's the cost of that? What is the cost of that extension of human life? Well, I think that Derek Jensen is making the argument here that the cost of that extension of human life, the cost of that convenience, the cost of those medical facilities, the cost of better protection against preventable disease is a planet that will no longer sustain us. And if you think that that is, the extension of the human life from 50 to 78 is worth absolutely raping the planet and making it a place where not only humans but any large organism can't make a life for itself, then I don't know, I guess I'd have to question your motives, I suppose. Do you have a Discord? Yeah, Deep Fat Fried has a Discord that I chill at, but interesting point, though I don't know if we can turn back now. Well, neither does Derek Jensen. I mean, he's an inherently pessimistic philosophical voice, at least in my opinion. I don't know if he would describe himself as such, but there's not a whole lot of roses and sunshine in his rhetoric if you listen to it. Like I said, this talk that he's giving here was recorded for a documentary called What a Way to Go, Life at the End of an Empire. So once again, this is not all roses, and this is not talking about going in your backyard and making a holistic garden and saving the world that way. Derek Jensen is telling you that it's too late for those things, and that if there's not a complete and utter sea change in the way that human beings think, not only about their own lives, but one another, communally, that we're done for. That's what this is about.
I mean, access to land is everything, because access to land means self-sufficiency. And so if the rich own the land, that means that the poor have to pay rent in order to exist. That's money being siphoned from the poor to the rich. I'm sorry, that's money being funneled from the poor to the rich. And if you're hungry and you want to eat and you have to go to the grocery store owned by the rich people, I mean, what would happen if you didn't pay rent? Eventually some guy with a gun is going to come and take you away. You can't sleep on this planet without paying a rich person. You can't eat. What happens if you go to the grocery store and you start to eat? You can't eat without paying a rich person. That's money always being siphoned. That's money always being funneled to the rich. And another part of this is that this culture from the beginning is based on, this is kind of big words, but it works, the privatization of profits and the externalization of costs. And that's another form of this funnel system working. And the cops, the police exist, and the military exists primarily as muscle for the rich to make sure that the poor don't step out of line.
I keep muting myself so you don't hear me vape, and it's fucking me all up. Okay, so that statement that he made there is an interesting one to unpack, I think. The privatization of cost and the externalization of, the privatization of profit and the externalization of cost is a fundamental idea about how business is done. We get to reap the benefit. Okay, as a company, every dollar of that profit goes right in the coffers. We privatize it. And then the costs of operating our business, we externalize. We subsidize with taxpayer funds. We subsidize with tax breaks from the government. Many large corporations in this country pay an effective 0% tax rate. So that's what he's talking about when he's talking about the funneling of funds from the poor to the rich. Once the rich have it, they never let it go. If it was a cycle or a siphon, like he talked about, where this ball of money was constantly being siphoned off of and it was being redistributed to the poorest among us, then we would have a whole different paradigm. But right now, the way it's set up is once the rich have that money, they never give a cent of it back. They would rather never give a cent of it back. But the costs associated with running their business, not just the monetary costs of keeping the doors open and keeping the lights on and the air conditioners running, but the environmental costs of constant exploitation of the land base, constant exploitation of rivers and streams and forests, that's all externalized. We pay that bill. everybody else that lives on this planet pays that bill, and the corporation sends that receipt payable to us.
I mean, a great example of that is Humboldt County, one county south of here, has the highest per capita, second highest per capita rate of rape in California. And there were, I think 3 years ago is the year I know the statistics for, there were 2 rapists arrested. I don't even know if either of them were indicted or anything. And they arrested at least 16 tree sitters that I know of. You know, we always think of, the job of police to, rescue kitties. I guess as firemen, we're supposed to rescue kitties from trees. But, the cops are supposed to, always be there to help us. But the truth is that may be the most of what they do, but the most important function is maintaining the social order. And what that means is putting down strikes, et cetera, which means supporting the rich.
So another, in my opinion, really inarguable point. We talk a lot outside of the philosophy of Derek Jensen about cops and how they've occupied a job in society that really nobody wants them to be doing. We like to think of cops as people that are out there watching our backs to protect us, and in some ways, I guess they do that, but cops have become the enforcers of this kind of funneling of money. He uses a couple of examples, and we covered these in his in-game talk. These examples are examples that he uses in this talk over and over. There are many different versions of it, and you'll hear some of the same stuff. This idea that you can't sleep with a roof over your head in this country without paying a rich person. You can't eat in this country without paying a rich person. You can't drink clean, fresh water in this country without paying a rich person for the privilege of doing so. These are things that are non-negotiable for human life. These are not luxuries or excesses that humans just want. If a human being doesn't eat, doesn't have shelter to sleep in, isn't exposed to the elements constantly, and doesn't have clean, fresh water to drink, a human being dies. Dies. So in order for you to not die, in order for you to not be gaffled up and thrown in a prison or just die of exposure or hunger or both, you've got to pay a rich person. You've got to take somebody who already has more money than they know what to do with and give them more of your money. You don't have enough money to do anything with, and they've got more money than they know what to do with. And in order for you to have the basic needs of a human being fulfilled, sleep, food, shelter, water, hydration, you've got to open up your wallet and give that person who already has more money than they could ever spend in their entire life a little bit more. And we accept this. This is an accepted part of how things work in this country. Not only do we accept it, but a significant portion of us defend it as if it's a good thing. That's a great thing. The capitalistic exploitation of basic human need is a good thing. Well, I think it goes without saying that Derek Jensen disagrees. I think it probably goes without saying that so do I. It's frightening to think about how the higher-ups in our society don't even need weapons or armies. They just got to close down the Whole Foods and yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the power that they wield is enormous. Enormous. I agree. So what's your alternative? Well, that's what we're talking about here tonight, right? I don't think that there is a viable alternative. I think that there would be a viable alternative if somehow there could be a sea change in human priority, globally speaking. I think that we might be able to make some overtures towards a different kind of society. But I think the point of this talk and the point of this type of philosophy is, at the very least, to try and wake people up to the fact that we don't have any time. The time to act is come and gone. And really, Derek Jensen does a couple of things. Number one, he talks about how we got here, and that's what he's doing now, hyper-exploitation. And then he talks about what's coming and what the planet will do eventually to us, what our future is. He invokes a lot of talk about great flocks of birds, passenger pigeons, that here in North America, when the first settlers arrived, there are descriptions of flocks of passenger pigeons that were so huge as they moved, from one place to the next to roost, that the day would be dimmer for multiple days as this enormous flock, this enormous chunk of biodiversity flew overhead. He talks about people writing about the rivers in America in pre-colonial times being so teeming with salmon and so frothing with spawning salmon that people were afraid to take their boats out onto the lakes and rivers because they were afraid that the salmon would capsize it. And now we live in a world where you never see that. There's almost nowhere that you can go in the continental United States and see a salmon spawn like that. And there's literally nowhere you can go in the continental United States and see the sun blotted out by a giant flock of passenger pigeons as they pass overhead for days on end. So this idea that it's coming, that's not what Derek Jensen is saying. He's not a doomsayer. He's not standing on the corner going, hey, if we don't turn it around, this is what's happening. He's pointing out what's already happened. The Northern Hemisphere used to be absolutely full of penguins called great auks. And this was in the 19th century, so not that long ago, within recent history as far as humanity is concerned. And the entire Northern Hemisphere, the coastal regions used to be absolutely full of great auks. Not O-X, A-W-Ks. I can pull up a picture of a great auk for you if you'd like to take a look. This is an animal that is no longer around, not because it just had its time, not because it just, lost the genetic lottery. This animal was killed because human beings wanted pillows. All of the major colonies of great auks were destroyed by human beings who valued them for their down to stuff with pillows. And now the animal doesn't exist anymore. And this is just one example of the type of collapse that we're talking about. And there's no turning it back. Turning back the dial would mean that the coastal areas of the Northern Hemisphere would once again be dotted with giant colonies of great auk. It would mean that once again the rivers of North America would be so teeming with salmon that horses were afraid to cross the river. It would mean that there would be whole days where the sun would be dimmed not from clouds but from the flocks of great migratory birds. There's no putting that cork back in the bottle. It's already happening, and it continues to happen. So this idea that the collapse is coming, if that's what you're taking away from this talk, you're wrong. Derek Jensen gives talks about how the collapse is here, it's in full swing, and we're living in it.
We can also talk about this in terms of abuse, that everything within an abusive family structure is set up to protect the abuser. Everything. And by the same token, everything within this culture is set up to protect the rich. That's what this culture is about, to deify them. I mean, the fact that you and I both know who Bill Gates is, and we don't know the name of a poor person who lives in that same town, that's really everything you need to know. He's valorized. Why is he valorized? Because he made a lot of money. That's supposed to be a good thing. That's a despicable thing, because it comes at the expense of the community.
So, yeah, a quick point there, talking about, the fact that Bill Gates is valorized in this country for the simple fact that he made a fuck ton of money. How's that a bad example? Because Bill Gates gives a token amount of his money to charity. The rich controlling things is similar to your brain allocating resources towards certain goals rather than spreading resources out evenly to every process. I guess I don't see that. That comparison. He gives billions upon billions to charity. Well, he should. I mean, does he not have billions upon billions? Has he not hoarded billions upon billions of dollars worth of wealth?
Well, this culture specializes in toxic mimics, and that's where you take the form of something and pervert the content. So rape, for example, is a toxic mimic of sexuality. It has the form, but the content is different. And we could make a whole list of toxic mimics, and one of the toxic mimics here is this identification with the larger whole, that's been siphoned off to a different direction. I don't want to use the word siphon, though, because we were just using it elsewise. That's been shunted off to a different direction, this identification. So part of what we're supposed to do is identify with our larger community. But that really only works when things are mutual, when the rest of the community is serving you as well. And that can include the land base, of course, and it should include the land base. But with civilization, we've been taught to identify with this larger whole that isn't us. I mean, a great example, the other day I was talking to a friend who said, wow, we lost a lot of refineries in Katrina, didn't we? And I said, I didn't know I had any refineries, otherwise I would probably be rich, It's like, do I get the money from these or something? Or I have another friend who called me a while back and said, how much longer do you think we're going to be in Iraq? And I looked around and it's like, I thought we were in Northern California. And it's like, no, Derek. How much longer do you think our troops are going to be in Iraq? I said, I got troops? Oh, that's great. Can I tell them to go blow up a dam for me or something? And it's like, this is why I only call you about once a month, Eric. And so I think we're taught early on to identify with the system. I think that's one reason why we identify with it. We're taught all the time, we're doing this. It's like, you know what? We're not doing this. We're not deforesting. I'm not deforesting. I'm not doing it.
Goddamn mute. Yeah, somebody asked if he wrote books, and yes, he does write books. He does write books. I'm just gonna stop muting this, I guess. No, I'm not.
And I actually oppose the people who do it, and the organizations, institutions who do it. The organizations and institutions which do it. There you go. There's a problem. Calling an organization a who, and then calling a tree an it. I mean, that's another problem. That's one part of the problem. Another part of the problem is that if your experience, not your philosophy, not your thinking, not your heart, not anything else, if your experience is that your food comes from the grocery store and that your water comes from a tap, you will defend to the death the system that brings those to you because your life depends on it. If, on the other hand, your experience is that your water comes from a stream. Imagine that, people used to actually drink from streams. I mean, how quaint is that? And if your experience is that your water comes from a stream and that your food comes from a land base, you will defend to the death that stream and that land base because your life depends on it. But we've gotten messed up and mixed up in this system where our lives actually depend on the system that is exploiting us. And another way to ask this is, why do so many victims of abuse stay with their abusers? Because they're identified with the system, and they've been taught since early on that everything is about protecting that system. So it's the same. The system is abusing and destroying us, and we've been taught from very early on to identify with that system. Because if we identify with the system, then we're fighting us and it, as opposed to simply fighting it. And that's much more difficult.
Almost did it again. So, what he's saying here, he just got done riffing on how we need to be more like a community. And then he immediately starts riffing on how we're too much like a community. Well, maybe not too much like a community, but a community under the wrong flag. He takes patriotism, this kind of overarching love of country that we're expected to have in our various countries, especially in the Western world. I won't speak for otherwise, but that we've been taught, instead of identifying with one another as human beings and identifying with the creatures and resources on this planet as what they are, we've been taught to identify with the system that hyper exploits those things. And so we have been convinced to argue for our own oppression. He uses a very good example about, if you are raised like most people in the Western world are, to know that your food comes from the grocery store, and then a group of armed guys takes over the grocery store, that town is going to rise up and, fight those people. They're going to fight for their resource. But the problem with that is that you're not actually fighting. You're not fighting for that resource. You're fighting for the rich person that owns that resource so that they can continue to sell it to you. The difference in living directly from the land base is that when you're fighting to save it, you're fighting to save it for yourselves, not for someone else, not for the exploitation, economically or otherwise, of one wealthy individual or a conglomerate of wealthy individuals. You're fighting to save it for you, and not just you, but your family and your village besides. And it's a very, very, very good way to illustrate what he's talking about, because it's a hard thing to unpack when he's talking about we need to be more communal. And then the next, little vignette over, he's going, we're too communal.
Because it's our identity. Because we identify more strongly as civilized than we do as living beings. I mean, that's one of the things I used to really wonder is, why did my father act the way he did? Why did my father, beat and rape us? And there's a bunch of reasons for that. One of them is that by being free and happy children, we reminded him of who he was before he had been abused by his parents, and he couldn't pay attention to that. So he had to stifle that.
Because to feel that, for him to look at that, would mean this upwelling of feeling, of grief and rage at his dad, that he couldn't
Both his
allow
parents.
that to come up.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because he had identified with them long before. That's one of the things you can do is, this is sort of, fancy politically correct speech, to say identify with the oppressor, but that's what happens, is when you feel really powerless, a lot of times you can then identify with the oppressor. And that's what he did. And once that identity is there, it's really hard to break that. And so he would destroy us rather than go through that death that he needed to go through.
So here, he's drawing a line of correlation between this kind of relationship that he was talking about, where we vehemently defend the right of a rich person to sell us the very things that we need to live, and an abusive relationship wherein the abuser comes to or the abused comes to identify with the abuser, a kind of a Stockholm syndrome. And I think it's an absolutely brilliant analogy. A lot of people would probably take umbrage of it. Physical abuse in the home is not this. He's not trying to draw that direct of a correlation. He's saying that the mindset is similar. We have all been trained since birth, and our parents before that and their parents before that, to be vehemently defensive of a system that is basically based on exploiting us, taking our money for the things that we absolutely need. And when you talk about tearing that down, as I do often, when you talk about non-participation in the governmental structure that holds all of that together, voting and exercising that constitutional right, when you decide that you no longer want to take part in this, as Derek Jensen describes it, abusive relationship, then other people around you will shake their fingers at you. How dare you? You're not doing what we're doing. You're not defending the system. You're not standing in defense of the rich people exploiting us. How dare you? And the same thing can happen in abusive households. If somebody is being abused, in fact, the whole family is being abused, and one of them decides to speak out about it, that person becomes a pariah. That person becomes a pariah because the system of abuse is what those people are defending, because it's what they know. It's what they were raised into. And despite the fact that their drunk father or mother is horribly abusive to them, they have come to realize that that is where my food comes from. That is where my shelter comes from. This is where my family is. This is what I identify as a human being. This family unit that is ultimately toxic to my survivability, but I'm angry at you because you spoke out about dad being an abusive drunk. You don't do that. And the same type of mentality happens in this country. When you decide that you're going to speak out against the abusive system that is based entirely on extracting the wealth of the bottom 90% of people so that the top 10% of people can hoard it forever. I love that. This is one of my favorite analogies that he makes in this entire talk, and I've watched this talk in its various forms probably 15 or 20 times, and it always just like rings a bell in me because it's a perfect example, and it really explains to me something that was a big question mark hanging over my head for the longest time, which is, why don't people see how fucked they are? Why do people continue to defend a system that is just raping them in the ass day after day after day after day? Why? Why? And Derek Jensen was the first person to come along and explain that to me in a way that I think makes absolute sense. So I don't know how much more Derek Jensen you guys want to do. I guess I'll take a poll of the chat. You guys want to move on to just more, normal Highdeology stuff? I'll just riff on whatever you guys want to riff on. I'll put on some jazz music or something, or we can continue to unpack this a little bit. I mean, I don't want to bore the folks that are watching. I know you don't come here for this. A lot of people saying they love it. More Jensen, they dig this. I vote move on. There's some move ons, but it looks like the vast majority of you are fine with a little bit more Jensen. I won't go on and on tonight. I'll probably end this before we stop, but let's do 10 or 15 more minutes of this talk, yeah?
One of the theses of my book, A Language Older Than Words, is that we as a culture are suffering from what Judith Herman would call complex post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD is when you've been traumatized and you may have a response to triggers associated with that. So if a woman's raped in a certain make and model of car, she may then feel apprehensive when she sees that make and model car. Or we've all heard the cliche of the guy, the Vietnam vet, who then every time a car backfires, he hits the ground. And Judith Herman talked about something called complex PTSD, which is what happens if you're not traumatized once or twice, but if you're actually in captivity for a long time, if you're held as prisoner. And she includes domestic violence. What happens if you're raised in a circumstance where you're a prisoner? And one of the things that happens is you become afraid of all relationships, and you have to control everything around you. And
I just got I get the shivers when Derek Jensen is on point, man. This is my favorite living philosophical thinker, and that is why he gives me the cold chills, because the line that he's drawing here is just so, it makes so much sense. It makes so much sense that we have been under this system for so long that is so exploitative. I mean, look at how unhappy people are. Look at the constant upheaval in our politics. Look at the constant upheaval in the private sector. People losing their jobs, people gaining their jobs. People are always seeking and they're always looking for something that it just isn't there. It just isn't there because they've been raised in this for so long that they believe that this is the only way that it can be. And not only that, but this is the best way that it ever could be. And to have the balls to take something like domestic violence and PTSD and apply it to, at least as an analogy, to a society as a whole, man, this is a ballsy thinker here. This is a dude that doesn't care. He's a liberal and a leftist, and most leftists would probably shout him down for his debasing of the victims of sexual and physical abuse in the home. As a way to make points about environmentalism, which they see as wholly separate. But I don't see that at all. I think that these types of analogies are what make people come to realize the truth of their situation. To take something intensely personal like post-traumatic stress disorder or the Stockholm syndrome that the victims of long-term family abuse can have is utterly brilliant. What's the solution you propose? This is one of those things that just comes screaming out of the void anytime you start to talk about something. Oh, yeah? Well, let's just say I agree. What's your solution? Oh, you don't have the perfect solution? Well, it's like the value in talking about this isn't that the group of you that are still here watching me unpack this talk are going to solve this problem. And if you think that that is what human discussion is about, the solution of every fucking problem, then I don't know what to do with you, man. I don't know what to tell you. Talking about these things is interesting to me. Outside of the fact that there may not even be a solution to them, it is interesting to me to listen to a man talk about society in a way that makes me feel like I understand it a little better. It doesn't do anything productive, then it's pointless. What a sad way to live your life. What a goddamn sad way to live your life, man. You are an obedient drone worker, well trained by your society. If I'm not making a widget, then it's time wasted. God, man. The weight of that on your chest must be unbearable, my friend. But here you are defending it. I love that too. You know, when people disagree with Derek Jensen on these points, oftentimes they just illustrate his point. Here's a guy that's saying it's absolutely pointless for us, a group of adults, to sit and talk about this philosophical concept because nothing ever gets done because of it. If that's not a tacit defense of the status quo, if that's not a tacit defense of the system that's exploiting him and his family, I don't know what. I don't know what is. The government doesn't know how to spend money, so taxing the rich can be rough, especially if they leave when they were doing good. I don't think that Derek Jensen has mentioned taxing the rich directly under the current system once in this entire talk. He's talking about the system of taxation, the system of government, the system of hyper-exploitative capitalism that we all live under being unsustainable. I feel like every time before this, our current system will fail and something else will take its place, and they will wonder how we ever live the way we are. Well, he talks about that at the beginning of this talk, about how the single most significant thing that the civilizations or people that come after us, and when I say after us, I mean after this current paradigm, current Western civilization, the number one thing that they will judge us on is the health of the land base. They won't care about fucking anything else. They're going to judge us solely on what we leave behind. And for good reason. Because when this paradigm falls and the grocery stores all close up and all the death and destruction happens and those small groups of people who are left on this planet are having to scrabble and do what our ancestors did and live off of the land base, they are going to be constantly faced with the toxic shit that our culture poured into that land base. Plastics, oils, carcinogenic chemicals. And, that really is the greatest tragedy, because all of the wars and all of the art and all of the great thinking that we did, I mean, they may come to appreciate those things later, but right at the beginning, when they're having to scrabble for food, when they're trying to fish in streams that are thick with toxic sludge from the fucking old tire factory that was up the way, that's how they're going to judge us. That's what they're going to look back on our society and say, what a bunch of fucking exploitative morons. To take the only planet that they have, to take the only thing that they have that sustains them as a species, and to rape it like this. To rape it to the point that even a small group of people like us can't find a stream to fish in because it's too toxic. That's how we'll be judged.
Because everything could hurt you, which means I need to control it before it can. You forget that mutual relationships are possible, and you begin to believe that all relationships are based upon hierarchy, because that was your experience, and you come to believe that all relationships are based on power.
I hate to pause him again so quickly, but this is so important. I was talking with Ashley about this the other day. And it's one of those old man talks, okay? So prepare yourself for that. One of these more like Paul waxing sentimental for his childhood. But there was something that I noticed that was very different during my childhood that doesn't really seem to exist now, which was a sense of community amongst your neighbors. Now, I'm not saying that this doesn't exist anywhere. I won't go that far. I'm sure it does. I'm sure there are still some tight-knit communities. But when I was a kid, whenever we moved into a new neighborhood, within 2 or 3 weeks, we were introduced to our neighbors. They would come by, they would welcome us, they'd bring a housewarming bundt cake or some shit. They'd come over and crack a beer and watch a football game and get to know you. And the benefit of that was that outside of your family, you had a group of people that were looking out for you in some way, communally speaking. So if there was a death in a neighborhood, if somebody passed away, a mother or a father passed away, when I was a kid, those neighbors would show up with food and offers of help. Do you need somebody to watch the kids? Do you need us to run you some errands? Do you need anything done? Is there anything that we can do? Hey, I baked you this casserole so that you don't have to worry about cooking for these kids. That doesn't happen now, man. That just doesn't happen. If somebody croaks in the neighborhood, there's a good chance that the person that lives 2 doors down doesn't even know it. It doesn't even know it. That part of humanity is dying, and what it's being replaced with is this give me mine and get out of my way mentality. I don't give a fuck about you. How can I? It's a very important thing. It's a very important thing to talk about. You lived in a more rural area, though. That's common in rural areas, less in big urban areas. The same thing happened with me. I mean, yeah, I guess. I did live in a rural area when I was way younger, and it was like that. I moved into the city when I was about 10, 11, and lived, in a suburban-style neighborhood that would be pretty indistinguishable from a neighborhood in any, a suburban neighborhood in any city, major or otherwise. And that same thing was there. My mom still lives in that neighborhood, and she knows 2 of her neighbors now. My mom used to know everybody that lived on her block, and they knew her. Now she knows her direct next door neighbor and the lady that lives, catty corner from her.
And of course, when we look around, that's what we see. And my thesis was not that we merely had complex PTSD, but that we have an entire culture suffering from it. So we are too frightened to enter into a relationship with these trees, with all of our neighbors. And so we call them resources, those to be exploited. And so we set up that all of life is this hierarchy, and of course, violence flows down the hierarchy, et cetera, et cetera.
So that's another big part of Derrick Jensen's philosophy, is that when you have a hierarchical civilization, which we do, that violence is never allowed to travel up the hierarchy, only down. So this defense of segmenting people out into different classes of people and segmenting the natural world into, these are not beings and natural parts of this world that we should work to protect and facilitate the survival of. These are resources because they're further down the hierarchy than we are. In the mind of humanity, at least westernized humanity, it's humans and everything else. And us being at the top of that hierarchy means that we can constantly export violence down it. And in this case, the violence is the rape of the natural world, right? Deforestation, toxified streams, toxified air, an ocean that has been completely depleted of 90% of its large fish. That's the violence that we, as a species, export down the hierarchy because we have decided that we're at the top of this. Not really realizing that the only reason that we can comfortably sit at the top of that is because we hyper-exploit everything below us, and it's running out. It's running out. The bigger you are, the harder you fall sometimes. I mean, you do hear stories from time to time about a rich person falling from grace, but the vast majority of rich people stay rich, and their children stay rich, and their children's children stay rich, especially in this country. So yeah, every once in a while, a rich person fucks up enough to where they lose everything, but usually rich people can fuck up way, way more than your average person can and just be fine. I watched a fucking documentary the other day called Fire, the greatest party that never happened, about that fire festival that went on. And that was a great example of this. Here's this rich person. Well, actually, the dude that pulled off the fire festival himself wasn't rich, but he exploited the mentality of the rich and pretended to be one of them and was able to pull off this giant fucking scam that left a bunch of rich people stuck on an island. There's an example of rich people fucking up and putting themselves in a bad situation, but we live in a world where you can throw a wad of $100 bills at pretty much any problem and watch it walk away. So let's hear a little bit more of this.
Well, if you have to continue to live in a city, you end up pretty deeply wounded. Every time I go to a city, I end up, at the end of the day, I feel abraded because there's so many people and there's so many sharp corners, and you end up insane. John Livingston, who wrote The Fallacy of Wildlife Conservation, has this wonderful bit where he talks about how we're essentially living, how most of our ideology, or all of our ideology really, is hallucination. And one of the reasons that happens is because we're living in an echo chamber where all of the everything that we receive, everything we see, hear, smell, taste, feel, is originates in or is mediated by humans and machines. And you're going, I mean, if you're in that sort of solitary confinement, you're going to start hallucinating, and you may end up believing strange things like the idea that humans are superior or separate from everything else.
So Adam asks, so we should move back to a tribal society. I don't think that's what he's arguing. I think he's arguing that we have no choice. If this current collapse that we are all living through, by the way, make no mistake about it, if we are remembered as a people in the future, historically speaking, we will be remembered as the people that lived in the Roman Empire at its collapse were remembered as people that were living in a dying civilization in its final death throes. And he's not saying we should move back to a tribal society. He's saying that is the inevitable end game of this, is that eventually this culture that we've created that is based on, if you could point at one thing, hyper exploitation. When it falls, when it crumbles and collapses, that is what humanity will have to do, if there are any of them left on the face of the planet, in order to survive. And those human beings will be living more like human beings have lived for most of the existence of the human species than we are. And they are going to judge us extraordinarily harshly for our rape of this planet. This isn't new thought. I didn't say it was. I mean, this video itself was recorded in 2015. And Derek Jensen has been doing this since the late 90s. So I didn't say this was new thought. Imagine not working in 10 years, being a morbidly obese sister. Woof. Man. When I type something, typically I read it. I proofread it to make sure that it doesn't make total fucking nonsense. But that is, that's a skill that apparently people find a little too tough these days. A quick proofread. Let's read that sentence and make sure it's not total garbled gobbledygook. And then they go oh, autocorrect, man, sorry. It's autocorrect prevents you from proofreading a statement before you hit enter? Okay. Paul, don't let this Highdeology be taken down. Why have you said that twice now? How should I conduct myself in this world if I'm socially awkward? I don't know, man. I don't know. I gather from the chat that we're pretty much done talking about this. It was fun, though. It was a fun one. I had a good time taking a look at Derek Jensen. I always have a good time talking about his ideas. I love this stream and would like to hear more streams like it. Well, maybe we'll do this every once in a while, you know. It was good times, though. It was good times. I always have good times talking about this. What are his books? Let me look up. Well, you can go look it up. Just go look up Derek Jensen. You've got Google. You're sitting on the internet right now. Open up your Google, type in his name. I know one of his books is named Endgame. That's the one that I've read. I haven't read any of his other books. The Powers That Be. Love you, though, Paul. Yeah. Thanks for the $5, buddy. Well, the culture of hyper-exploitation being so profitable, it's baffling to see how many people never make a dime from living in it. Well, that's the aforementioned funnel effect that he's talking about, right? Well, I think I've just ran off all there's a positive and a negative to doing streams like this. I feel like I've run off all the tismites that usually, poke me in the ribs and keep the show going. They're like, oh, he's talking about something of substance tonight. Let's vamos. Excuse me. Wow, that was a weird, hiccup burp that just attacked me out of nowhere. A burp up. Pretty gross. So I'm learning guitar. I have no experience with any other instrument that requires extreme finger movements. This has created a roadblock. My question is, would you recommend taking piano first? I'm not a musician, man. I don't know. I'd say if you want to play the guitar, just stick to it. I mean, everybody that picks up a guitar for the first time has trouble playing it at first. It takes repetition and practice. How far are you into Elite? I gifted it to you and would like to know your progress. I haven't played Elite in a while, but I've done I did a lot of exploration. So I've got an ASP Explorer, and I'm about halfway or maybe less than halfway to the galactic core. I decided to do the whole let's travel to the center of the Milky Way thing. And the last time I played, I was somewhere on that journey. So yeah. Movie commentary, Paul. What? I don't play guitar, but I used to play a lot of Guitar Hero. Pretty much the same, right? Dude, I gotta tell you, can one of you guys, there's one constant commenter tonight that I have had to just absolutely like fight my urge to ban, because everything he says is like shortened, like he's in a rush to get out. I hate people that type like that, man. Like they're texting while they're on the freeway and trying to juggle a coffee and a cat, at the same time. Holy fucking shit, man. I'm not even gonna call him out specifically because I don't want to give him the fucking satisfaction of him knowing that he's pissed me right the fuck off tonight. Just a dumb fuck though. Oh, he knows who he is, dude. Trust me, he knows who he is. Just a goddamn nightmare. I'd like to hear your quick thoughts on the idea of gorilla ontology. Okay. Has a short paragraph on Wikipedia. Okay. Let's see what we find. Gorilla, not gorilla. Okay. It's a practice described by Robert Anton Wilson in the 1980 book, The Illuminati Papers, as the basic techniques of all my books. Ontology is the study of being. The gorilla approach is to mix the elements of each book that the reader must decide on each page how much of this is real and how much is a put on. The goal of guerrilla ontology is to expose an individual or individuals to radically unique ideas, thoughts, and words in order to invoke cognitive dissonance, which can cause a degree of discomfort in some individuals as they find their belief systems challenged by new concepts. The ultimate goal of guerrilla ontology is to promote positive brain change and new ways of experiencing and adapting to reality. Okay. Too smart, ban him. I understand. It's the idea of trying to not only be informative, but to be provocative so that you force people into these positions of thinking about things that they're normally not exposed to. And thus, the idea necessarily isn't to get your ideas across, but to foment a sense of uncomfortability in your audience. I never knew the term guerrilla ontology, but I would say that it is something that I engage in quite often with you guys right here. There are times when I come here just to chill. There are times when I come here with a distinct desire to piss off as many people as I can. There are times that I come here just to get you guys to react, just to serve you a different idea. I mean, us covering Derek Jensen like that, So yeah, I never knew the term of it, but I guess I engage in a little bit of guerrilla ontology myself, with you all being my guinea pigs, of course. And I'm sure that a lot of you are engaged in that same thing right back in me and with one another in this chat. There are certainly any number of you here on any given day that I do a Highdeology that are here to throw a monkey wrench in the works, to get people talking about things that make them uncomfortable, to push people into uncomfortable mental positions. Of course they do. Yeah. I'm no super philosopher or anything. I'm subject to the same whims that you guys are. So it's a back and forth guerrilla ontology fest here, I suppose. I'm not great at convincing people either, but I am really, really great at pissing people off. So, you know, do what you do best, I guess. It's called trolling. Yeah, kind of. It kind of is. Let's see if I can get us a little bit of music going here. I'll find us some jazz or something, man. I'm feeling like that smooth jazz playlist that I had going last night. I love smooth jazz, man. It makes me feel like talking. It's great music to talk to. Let's see, playlist. Let's see. I like jazz noir. There we go. Cool. I will watch Avengers 4. But my superhero fatigue is in full swing. And I've made the statement that the final Avengers movie in this arc is going to be the last superhero movie that I'm going to watch for a long time. So I'm not super excited about the new Avengers movie, but I will go see it because I liked the last one. I want to see how it all wraps up. I've seen most of the Marvel Cinematic Universe leading up to it. I've only skipped a few. Ant-Man and the Wasp I never fucked with. You know, I'm trying to think if there's any other ones that I just skipped. I think that's the only one. Ron Paul is the secret weapon against Thanos, you think? You think that's how the Avengers are going to save us all? They're going to invoke Ron Paul on us? You might want to check out Robert Anton Wilson's Prometheus Rising book. It has a lot of dated ideas, but also has a ton of interesting philosophy you'd enjoy. I'll check it out. Let me add it to my list. Prometheus Rising. Put it on my Amazon list. I'm trying to do this now that I'm at the computer and I can actually take notes when you guys suggest something to me. You know, I'll throw it in a wish list or something, so I remember. There we go. Wish listed. Hey. You really want a fat, greasy, drippy calzone? Dude, me too. Calzones are the fucking best, man. Like an inside-out piece of pizza or something, you know? Any more news on the Uwe Boll episode? Yes. Yes. Guys, keep it under your hats, but Wednesday. You didn't hear it from me. Wednesday. It's going down, baby. I just finished reading Dune. Well, I didn't read it. I listened to the audiobook. I've read Dune now, I think 3 times. So I just finished that. I don't know what I'm going to read next. Maybe this book that was just recommended to me. It's my first time really dabbling with audiobooks. I prefer, like, I don't like ebooks. I can't get into, like, reading a book on my phone. It just doesn't feel right to me. So I like the physical page turning and shit. But the audiobook thing is kind of cool. I was able to get through all of Dune, so I guess I dig it. You drift off too much on audiobooks. See, I do too. I listen right before I go to bed, so, you know, I'll typically do a chapter or two a night, and then I'll fall asleep during the third one, you know, and I'll come back the next night and go like, all right, I've ended off at the end of the second chapter, so I'll go back and listen to the rest. Oh, I've read The Gunslinger, yeah. I've read a lot of Stephen King books. I'm a big fan. Read The Truth About Morality by Katy Perry. Okay. Is it one of the greatest philosophers of our time, dude? You ever write your own book? I'm actually working on my own book, slowly but surely. It's a long process, but yeah, I've been working on a book for a few months now called Beware the Giant Worm. It's a book about sex. Grapefruiting, yeah. Grapefruiting. No, it's going to be I guess maybe a book about sex is a little too broad. It's going to be a book about my sex life. That's better. That's a better way of putting it. Gross. Yeah, it will be. It will be. People are just like freaked out that I would write about my sexual experiences, but my sex life has been uniformly hilarious pretty much my whole life. So it'll be a cathartic book to read. You know, if you've ever had an embarrassing sexual experience, this is the book for you. It'll make you feel better immediately. It's not a short story, it's a collection of short stories. I have no idea how long it's going to be. We'll see when it's done. And there's no, you know, estimated time of arrival either, so don't bug me about it. I'm working on it in my free time, and it's a slow but sure process. This is a stand-up bass, not a bass guitar. You can tell. You can hear that vibration inside that big wooden body. Is your book done yet? Oh God, no, this is not that type of book. This is not a how to get laid book. In fact, this is a cautionary tale. You know, I hope it helps some people who are at the beginning of their sex lives to not live a hilarious and embarrassing one like I have. delicious and nutritious. Good liquid. Got to keep hydrated, man. Hydrated. I'm looking forward to the next one too. I've still got a lot of work to do on it. I've only got like a skeletal structure for the final, because this is really going to be the final Dank D&D of this arc. And at the end of it, we're going to decide whether or not we want to roll new characters or move to a different system or keep these characters going but on a different storyline. So, can I draw it all? No, not really. What if you died while doing a Highdeology? That'd be pretty cool. I'd probably sit here and rot for like 3 days with all of you guys laughing in the chat. Be like, he hella dead. Oh man, dude, I tuned out last night and he's still dead. Yeah, it'd probably be the most popular live stream I ever did. Dead Man gets 200,000 views and has the biggest live stream on the internet for 3 days before authorities show up to take his body away. Ever seen a dead body? Yes. Yes, I've been to open casket funerals before. How would you die? I don't know. How do you want me to die? What would be the most entertaining way for me to go? If I were to croak during a stream, you know? Is it surreal seeing a dead body? Yes, it's not something I enjoy. I've seen 3 corpses in my life, and you just don't forget it. It's been years and years and years and years, and I can still see the picture. Did you touch them? Fuck no. No, thank you. The ones I've seen looked pretty pleasant. Morticians did good work. I mean, I don't know. It clearly serves something for some people to see, their loved one last time or whatever, but it does nothing but disturb me. Super depressing topic. Yeah, no shit. Ever seen a body? That would be a cool way to die. Trial by combat. I'd be into that, I think. Well, I tell you what, folks. It's been a decent one tonight, right? We had fun, but not real fun. Hope you all have a good night. I'll see you. Well, I guess I'll see you when I see you, yeah? Take care. Bye.